6 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. We have a quorum. We'll call the meeting to order. The Bristol County Water Authority. The first item is public input. I see no one from the public here. Washington Trust is up next, but they're caught in traffic for the moment. So we'll go forward a little bit and then we'll put them in as soon as they get here. Entertain a motion to accept the minutes of October 25th.
So moved.
Any questions, additions, adjustments?
I had a small one, and just a typo thing, I sent this it over.
Okay, ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, nay. The ayes have it.
Just note that I abstained because I was there.
Okay, one abstention. And now we're going to pass out the executive session minutes, review those, and we'll turn them back in because we have voted to seal them.
Move to approve the minutes and seal them.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye, raise your hand. That way we have the vote, yes, it is unanimous. And now turn them back in, please.
Don't be wrong. Oh, just so you know, I read it. I'm not taking it home.
The executive director's report.
Okay. We're started working on the budgets. Capital budget is almost done, the draft budget, so we can present it for review to the board next month. Looking at all of our projects, including the Pawtucket pipeline. And we're planning for dates and years that we can do construction and then financing to support that. The Upper Kickamuit, still working on that. We've been trying to get a meeting with the Rhode Island DOT. They don't think it rises to their level of concern, but it is important for us to get the bridge replaced on Schoolhouse Road in order to be able to remove that dam. So we have asked Senator Coyne and Senator Feeleg for some help in that direction. And Senator Coyne did say she'd be trying to work with us in that, as well as trying to get a meeting. The breach analysis is almost done, and it'll be sent to the DEM. We're under a court order to have that performed. Another major issue we've had this week is the contaminated soils at the Metacom pump station. There was a diesel spill there, it looks like around 2010, based on some video picture, aerial pictures we have showing where we had grass and we had no grass. We've been excavating, we've done some pretty large size holes up there. And we think we've reached the extent of it, but we can't get underneath our 12-inch main, which is the high pressure main. So we're working with, PAR's working with us and the contractor's working with us, and they've been reporting to the DEM, and they believe we can start this. The contamination is actually fairly low level, so we're going to have to remove some of the soils, have it taken to the landfill, and we're actually going to cap the rest, which is we're going to put flowable fill in the hole, and then the area around the pump station is going to be paved. So far the DEM says that's acceptable. They've given us some verbal approvals to move forward with that. So we just need the last final batch of testing from the laboratory to make the arrangements with the landfill.
Who did the painting?
It was Amstar. I think of the name was done around 2010, but we have no direct evidence that it was then. It's just
What does capping mean? What is that?
Generally, it means you you take out a couple of feet of soil and then put a new layer of soil on top of it for areas where it's really low, and the rest of the area around the pump station is going to be paved. So that'll provide a permanent cap. And then there was actually be some instructions put in our use of the property that anytime we want to dig, say up there in the future, we would have to notify the DEM.
So you have no proof that that contractor who was painting had the diesel spill, but what makes you suspect that is the case?
Just because of the photographs before 2010 and photographs that were later on after 2010 show a brown spot in the area, but we have no proof that it was
So that
due
there was
to-
no
due
report
to
at the
them.
time that there was
No.
a diesel spill. Your conclusion is based on what you see today.
Just circumstantial,
Right.
yes.
Now, the company that you would guess it might be, was it a company that was working for Bristol County Water Authority?
Yes, we hired them under contract to paint the tank.
Okay.
Well, you know, I'm kind of troubled by this, because if I hired a contractor to paint my house, I would have inspected the job afterward, and I think I would have noticed an area of grass kill. And clearly, if they had spilled diesel, it would have killed the grass at that point.
Were there any project photos taken at the time that might show something?
I've looked at all the photos I can find, and I don't see any photos specifically of that spot.
Are there any reports that maybe your operation people might have submitted back then?
I mean, when you do
No.
maintenance like that, I'm assuming painting was a significant expense. Somebody who's an employee has to inspect the job and sign off that it was done as per the contract, right?
Generally.
There's a private inspection for the inspection work, because they've got to climb to the top of the tank. So the issue.
But they're not there all the
The
time.
issue is likely that what we do is the painting of the tank led into the cooler seasons, so they had to heat the tank. And then you bring in big hot air blowers that run off the diesel fuel. That's circumstantially probably what happened at some point in time. I don't know how much money, only been 5 gallons, but it's enough to cause havoc.
Oh, yeah.
There was some where they, feeding those tanks. So we don't have any evidence, no documentation.
No, I
of what
hear that,
happened.
but what I'm hearing is it's costing us $50,000 more than our budget for this. And I'm just saying that in Gina McDonald's world, I would have inspected it carefully afterward, and if there were a problem, I would have taken a picture and made a notation. I think you guys
That's
too,
generally
ma'am.
what we would do.
This is a lot of money.
Well, we learned from that.
But we found no evidence that that was
mistakes
done
I
at the
made.
time.
So,
Most of the operation personnel employed at the time retired. Checked with a few, nobody had direct
Well, but
memory
one
of it.
presumes procedurally, they would have been instructed to take a picture and file a written report if they had seen anything.
If they know about it, yeah. The
So-
only evidence we have is the aerial photos prior to that time showed nice green grass, and then there's a little kidney-shaped splotch which carries on for a couple of years afterwards.
So who was in charge here in 2010 supervising the outside contractor who supervised staff?
The prior executive director and operations people.
Anything else?
Well, let me ask just one further question. Based upon this situation, is there anything you would change in review and acceptance of outside contractors' work?
We're much more thorough with, and we make sure we have really good inspectors as well. And generally, we have somebody full-time now as well.
You usually have
They
a-
used to spot check inspection and construction projects in previous years. We make sure we have somebody full-time now.
Don't we normally hire outside people to do that? Is that how it works?
Yes, we do.
In
Is
those
it outside
days,
all the time, or is it 100% outside? Or do you do something?
Depends on the projects, but generally it's outside people, and then with our people working with them. It's
Do we
as
rotate,
needed.
do we have a list of those people who qualify? I mean, is the work
Yes.
assigned to different people?
Well, generally, we have a couple of people that we pretty much draw on, but they're part of the engineering services proposals that we do every 3 years.
Would it be of any value to contact the company that did the inspection and ask them if they have their daily logs to make any determination?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah.
You may recall that I think during that period of time, we did not have a major capital program underway like we have now. So we have a lot of activity going on now, more people on the job, more attention to all these different contracts. Things were very quiet, I think, in that period of time. And that may have been one of the reasons that we weren't as attentive. I'm not making excuses for it, only to say we were not cranked up, moving ahead on all fronts the way we are right now. I got
Is that
something.
area open to anyone else if it wasn't the paint? I mean, could someone just,
No, it's an all fenced, that's our tank area, it's all fenced in.
Was the spill contained to property that the Bristol County Water Authority owns?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a house behind the property, and we've spoken with them. It turns out that they were part of a spill of about 15 years ago from a gas station up the road. And so it's the only place that has a well. And they do not drink the water. So we did offer them a service, just as a preventative measure.
Makes sense. Question about your any other comments or questions about this?
The only other comment I have is that camera footage these days is very, very cheap. And if we have that paint or anything else painted again, where this kind of situation could occur, it might make sense to just have a video recording.
Of course, it wasn't from the paint or the cleaner of the paint. It was, from a different kind of an animal.
I understand that, but if it's a motion-activated video camera and you keep that footage, then you have proof 7 years later that something happened.
Keep going.
And that's pretty much it.
I have a question about the outreach program with the students from Roger Williams University. The feasibility of this distribution expansion to Twisted Point. Is the Warren manager or the Warren council aware that this evaluation is going on?
No, this is strictly a school project,
Okay.
and they want to make it very clear it has nothing to do with reality.
Okay,
It's just typically an exercise for the students.
gotcha.
And I had a question about the hydrants that don't drain well. A third of our hydrants need to be manually treated with a food grade antifreeze. Why is that? Is that a particular brand of hydrant that there's a problem with, or?
No, it's generally some of the older hydrants, some of the areas where we have higher groundwater. And we're a part of our hydrant maintenance program as well. We're trying to get out and a lot of those would have to be dug up and either replaced or dig up. For the hydrants relatively newer, you would actually dig around it and dig out all the soils, put in gravel for drainage and so on, and make sure that those work properly. But typically, it's either they're not draining because the groundwater is high, or there's essentially
So this is,
had issues over the years where they get plugged.
so this is the ground area that doesn't drain well around
Right.
it? Okay.
And then so the drains, the hydrants are equipped with drains, and if those get plugged, they don't drain properly.
So in the event that a fire takes place and the hydrant is to be turned on, the first amount that comes out is the several gallons of the fluid that you put in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's a food grade. So
Okay.
it is no issue with contaminations with water.
I mean, the only question I have is the cost of digging out those hydrants versus every year putting antifreeze in.
Well, it's part of our program to start working on those, and some of the older ones especially may have a 4-inch lateral leading to the hydrant, 4-inch pipe. We want to replace those with 6 inches, so we're starting to target the ones that we want to replace first, and the ones that we can
Does
get
food
working
grade,
properly.
excuse me, does food grade mean organic?
No, not necessarily. It just means it meets all the standards for food quality.
It won't kill you, which regular
Yeah.
animals
How
can.
much, how much can it cost to put antifreeze in a hydrant?
It's expensive. Like with the hydrant, the antifreeze is expensive, and we do have a larger number of problem hydrants than we should have. But that goes to the point of lots of years of not doing anything with it.
Neglect.
So when you look at the replacement of a hydrant, our cost to replace a hydrant would be somewhere between the road restoration and everything else, somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 a piece to replace a hydrant.
To replace it?
What would it
Now, what's
cost?
the cost to put the antifreeze in?
The antifreeze,
It's on man.
we have the labor, the antifreeze is expensive because it's food grade, but we do that annually. So the goal would be, the high groundwater table hydrants, there's nothing we can do about because that's where they are. But it's the ones that, as Pam said, the bleeders in the bottom are plugged. So the exercise there would be go out, dig around the hydrant.
I understand that, I'm just saying, but what's the cost to go out and put antifreeze in a hydrant?
Probably
As far as I know, they've been doing this for 100
lots of
years.
years. And we probably spend, I'd say we spend probably $2,000-3,000 a year. for
Like $2,000,
antifreeze.
$3,000 a year versus $6,000 to fix one drain.
Yep. Yep. But some of the hydrants.
Well, the ones we replace, obviously.
Oh, I understand that, I understand that, but
Then you can sell the hydrant you take out of the ground to a dog owner, put it in their yard.
Out of a dog park. How often do you have a freezing hydrant that results in the hydrant being put out of service?
We don't. We take good care of them. We want to make sure we don't ever get into that
We have it
situation.
coordinated with each fire department, that if they operate a hydrant during the winter, they'll contact us, the guys go back up.
I'm gonna tell you, I've been in the Warren Fire Department for 60 years, and I never remember one frozen hydrant during the course of a fire.
But
We're very, very careful about it.
And to be supportive of what you're doing is, it would be not a fun project to try to have to deal with this in the middle of February if one did freeze.
Okay, anything else on Pam's report? Okay, let's go back, welcome. We'll go back to our first item here, the Washington Trust Annual Pension Investment Report.
I'd like to welcome those of you who haven't met
And you have
Gene McCabe and Joe McCain
I know.
from Washington Trust.
I'll take one if you get an extra. Not over that.
No, we have
You're extra?
Grab that.
Welcome.
Thank
Did you get some traffic coming in?
Yeah, small city, but big traffic tonight. Sorry to be late, thank you for juggling the schedule. We were last here in August of 2016, and since then, it's been about the easiest year of my career. Market just has gone up and up and up each month, with no corrections. Our portfolio, for the most part, has outperformed in that environment as well. Really after Brexit, after June 27, 28, with that surprising vote out of England, the market turned on a dime. And instead of being a very cautious market, buying dividend yield stocks, it became a growth-oriented, risk-oriented market. I think it was amplified after the election results in November. And actually, it was in November that we started to underperform. When that post-election market took off, it left Amazon behind. It left a lot of great quality companies in its wake somehow. So we didn't keep up that last quarter of 2016, but we've outperformed every single month this year to date, and the market, as you know, has just been going up new records every month. So it's been kind of an easy ride since we were last year. Unforeseen, unpredicted. No one really expected these kinds of returns. In fact, we thought the fourth quarter rally was taking profit out of 2017. You know, it's kind of getting ahead of itself, but obviously that has not been the case. On page 1 of the booklet, you can see most recent as of November 9th, about $4.5 million under management here, right up against that 70% equity target
Right.
for the allocation. Annual income generated by this portfolio is just under $90,000. And we have a 3% cash weight. The only issue we've had as far as managing this goes is the need to keep the large cash balance in anticipation of retirement. So there were 2 large chunks paid out during 2017, $500,000, $400,000. And when you have a $5 million portfolio, that you've got to be pretty, even with a 70% equity allocation, you've got to be prudent. So that's on an overall basis, bonds have outperformed and stocks have outperformed. But the cash drag that, you know, having to keep a 9 or 10% weight in cash in anticipation of retirement looming has held down overall return. You can see on page 2, this is on a calendar year basis, through October 31. Equity indexes over on the left side, 4 bond-related indexes on the right side. EM is emerging markets, up 32%. You have a 6% weight in your portfolio in emerging markets through ownership of Alibaba stock and ownership of an ETF to get broader exposure in the emerging markets. The EFA index, up 22%. You've got a 5% weight in the EFA index. On the other hand, mid caps have underperformed. They had a great fourth quarter. They were anticipated to be a winner in 2017, in large part based on corporate tax rates going down. And as you know, that has not happened yet, and mid caps have lagged. We have a sizable weight, a 27% weight. I added that in February. Again, they look like a sweet spot, they look like a good place to be, but that 27% commitment in stocks has lagged the overall index, which is up 16.9%. What you do own is called the WMI growth sleeve in this display, our growth stock portfolio, and that on a standalone basis is up nearly 23%. You also have a 10% weight in small caps, again a laggard, kind of contrary to what was expected as the year unfolded, but there we are. You've got 2% in REITs. Happily, the REITs you own have done very well, not reflective of the 2.7% weight for the overall category. And on the bond side, on fixed income, the 2.3% return for the Barclays Intermediate Index. That's the benchmark we use for your portfolio, and we've been a little bit better than that. Page 3 just kind of shows you how the market did turn. The dark shade is this year, the lighter shade is 2016. In 2016, the winners are the value managers. Lipper is an organization that monitors mutual fund performance. Every manager has a style. You're in a growth style portfolio. In 2016, you can see on the left-hand side of the display, the growth managers had a poor year last year, are having a great year this year. Conversely, the value managers did so well in 2016 and are lagging the market in 2017. Honestly, it was the Brexit turning point, and everybody became risk-oriented. There's a quilt on page 4, brings you up to date on how each asset class has behaved. To the far right, 10-year annualized informs us that for the last 10 years we should have been in mid-cap stocks, high-yield bonds, and small-cap stocks, and earning about 8% in each category. You would not have wanted to have been in natural resources or commodities, losing 6% a year for 10 years.
Are each of these calendar years at the top? Or
Calendar years. And so it's the category and then the percent return it had for that calendar year.
So this committee made a really good decision a few years ago, increasing your equity allocation. So we at Washington Trust are much more constructive on U.S. equities. There's been a run-up, obviously, in the equity markets. but you made the decision to move from 60% stock allocation to a 70% stock allocation, and that was really a good move. And you'll see, Jean will go through that, but that additional equity allocation really helped.
Exactly 4 years ago, the investment policy statement.
Yeah, so that was good. That was good. That was good move.
There's no questions on page 5. You can see performance for the fiscal year ended, or the pension year ended June 30th. We have each quarter of 2017 broken down as to performance by asset category and total. And for the year 2017, total return was 12%, compares favorably with your actuarial assumption, compares favorably with the benchmark. Stocks up 3.8%, and your bond portfolio up 1%. On the following page, I kind of wanted to give you this broken out because we haven't seen it in a while. The following page, you have that same 2017 column, followed by the first quarter of your new pension year, which would be July, August, and September, and then October. Again, you can see outperformance for the fund versus the actuarial assumption and versus the benchmark. And common stocks outperforming, bonds not doing much, but neither is the index. Overall, the 4 months of this pension year, the portfolio is up 5.5%. So we're up to a good start. November, as I think you're probably also aware, the market seems to be taking a pause here in November, digesting some of this move finally. Similarly, on pages 7 and 8, 2 displays, one for your fiscal year cash flow displays, one for fiscal year 2017, and then the following page brings you up to date for 2018. At the bottom of page 7, you can see a net return from investments of $527,000, a nice sum, for a smallish kind of portfolio. And already up to a good start on page 8, net return from investments in the last 4 months is $235,000.
What was the return in the prior period? 527? What was the return the year before? It was 527 as of June 17. Was it the 16? Just curious.
$527,000 for fiscal year, pension year 2017.
Right, and what was it the prior year, the prior period?
I don't know, it's in a prior book.
Well, if you look at the annualized returns, just look at page 5. That has the annualized returns. So 2017 is 12%. The 1 year annualized is 12%. So you're well ahead of the actuarial assumption. And state of Rhode Island pension funds would love to have these kind of returns. It's just, these returns are strong and healthy, but I think it's because of the decisions that were made here on the asset allocation. And not having hedge fund exposure.
So why did the state lose so much money?
Well, I think they had a lot in year by year. It makes a difference. So you have to be mindful what year you're looking at. But they had a lot in hedge funds. And the idea with hedge funds is to have less correlation. The reality is they're going to have higher correlations. That's just the way the world is working. And the fees are very high. And they also have a lot in international. And when you look at the currency plays a part in that too. So if you didn't hedge your currency exposure, you got killed. And they got killed. Because they had a lot of international exposure and not the currency. They didn't hedge their currency play. So no one's right. We don't all have a crystal ball, but I think you keep it simple though. So what we do at Washington Post, and I was with the state for several years. I'm a treasurer of ours. And we kept it simple. We didn't have hedge funds. We didn't have all this international. We didn't have a lot of esoteric asset classes because at the end of the day, you pay a lot of money for that. You pay a lot of money for these esoteric asset classes. And so what we do, and Jean's on the committee, I do fixed income primarily, and Jean does the equity side. But what we do is pay attention to fundamentals, the individual stocks, right? And are they making money on the revenue side? Are they making money on the earnings side? And it's try to keep the noise out of it all. We just focus on that plain vanilla kind of best idea strategy and try not to get too fancy. Because sometimes when you do that, that's a problem. So.
Thank you, I didn't mean to digress from.
No, it's a good question. It's really a good question. But it's,
Pages 9 and 10 just give you some background on 4 new stocks we've added to the portfolio recently. A healthcare company, a tech company, General Motors, which is going into the electric vehicle movement, and then Starbucks. And you can see the record of transactions since August on page 11.
Is the real turnaround in General Motors because of the new president?
No, I'd say it's because of, well, I'm sure
I
he's,
mean, I have a feeling that she has really changed the direction of the
The
company.
president of General Motors.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Just a bunch of crap.
No, I'm sorry,
I had no doubt that's what
because that was heralded when she took over.
Sure.
That was heralded as a really big deal. And you know, the quality of, I mean, the way they advertise, all the awards they're winning for quality is something they didn't have before.
Yeah, point taken. What the analysts on Wall Street are focused on is electric vehicles and the changeover from gas powered to electric, and GM is kind of at the forefront of it. Tesla gets a lot of publicity,
Right.
but for us, General Motors might be what we want done.
Gotcha.
So a lot of good news, since August of last year. Our economic outlook kind of calls for more of the same, honestly. We don't see a recession looming. There's a synchronized global economic recovery underway, which is the first time in a decade. So I was anticipating a correction all these happy months, and maybe it's that synchronized economic recovery that telling traders don't sell now, you'd be a fool. Everything, all the ingredients are there for this rally to continue. So we've had a long bull market since 2009, but we've had economic growth that's at that 2%, 2.5% level. We're not overheating, we don't have inflation, we don't have shortages of things. It can just keep going. If a tax cut does hit, it'll help corporate profits even further. In the absence of a tax cut, we still see corporate profit growth in 2018 that could be stocks higher.
yeah, we just wrapped up, well, close to being wrapped up is the earnings results, right, for the third quarter. And I think revenues were up, if you look at S&P 500 companies, not ours, they were up 12%. And I think earnings were up about, something, right? So year over year, you're looking at double-digit gains. Unfortunately, a lot of that is the expense of human capital and human resources as companies become more efficient and they're using robots, right,
Yeah.
to manufacture and things like that. But yeah, their fundamental revenue and earnings growth are high single digits or high double digits.
Well, many articles have appeared about AI, artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and robots, the
Yeah.
combination, what it's doing to the
Yeah.
workforce everywhere.
It's fascinating, and it is taking unfortunate jobs away. It is. I know I went to the Apple store, and my phone died, and so I asked them how their battery died, and how do we recycle this? What are you doing with all these metals? And a robot took it apart. He put it on the internet. He said, just YouTube this. 30 seconds, this thing got recycled. It usually would take, 2 hours for a human to do it. But it's what's happening. So, yeah,
And that's a job at the bottom end of the
yeah.
pile,
Yeah.
to recycle.
And it's a dangerous
recycling.
job because of all sorts of, toxic metals that are in your phone. And this thing just did it. And there was seconds. So,
China claims, China's got the market on all that stuff, though. China's been hoarding and buying, not hoarding, they've been buying, they're controlling, as I understand it, they're controlling a lot of the precious metals that are used in all this electronics.
yeah. Then there's uranium.
Just to sum up our economic outlook, on page 13 is a dashboard which we update each week, monitoring developments in employment, and consumer habits, housing, industrial production, and GDP growth, inflation, leading indicators, and interest rates. Down the center of the page, short-term and long-term trends in each of those areas, and you find one minus sign in the whole mix. It's overwhelmingly positive, essentially. It would take a recession to really knock this bull market over. We might get a correction. It might have already started, for all we know in November. But we don't see it being more than just, a couple of uncomfortable months followed by a resumption of an uptrend.
Oh, yeah. So if you're page 16, this is stock rate, interest rate, but then there's also bonds. And you need to have exposure there just because of your cash flow situation. But it's a conundrum that we're dealing with right now. If you look at that on page 16, look at that 10-year column. That 4.7% yield is what we're used to receiving over a very long period of time. And you sort of have to hold your nose, right? And now we're getting 2.4%. Actually, it was lower than that earlier in the year. So what that means is yields are lower, which means bond prices are higher. And so it's not the Fed that is directing fixed income and bonds, it's supply and demand. So if you look at the next page, I will show you, so we think that 2.4% is anemic, right, which it is. And then if you look at where we are today in other countries, so look at that green bar on page 17. The green line shows you that the German Bund, which is the same thing as the 10-year Treasury, is about, looks like 40 basis points or so, or 0.4%, where ours is 2.4%. So they think that our 2.4% is really a great yield, but it's not. So you just have to be really careful in the bond market these days. It's just, so when I'm trying to build a new portfolio, we look at, and so Jean has portfolios, and we get a bond matrix report every week, and we see what's matured. And so when we're trying to replace bonds, we try to find high coupon. So we're not a junk bond manager. We try to find high coupon, high quality, short calls. So short duration. So in the hopes that bonds will be called and that then we can replace them with higher yielding, lower priced bonds, in a couple of years. So we're looking at the 3-year curve. We think that's sort of the sweet spot on the fixed income side. And what's really interesting is, the Treasury comes out every week with a different auction and different maturities. Over 50% is going to international investors, not U.S. investors. So that's the thing. It's like people, U.S. citizens, U.S. pension plans, U.S. foundations are not the ones buying these bonds. It is international investors buying them. So it's really supply demand, and I think it's going to continue. I think that situation will probably continue for a while. But again, we're high quality, high coupon, and short duration. That's sort of our strategy, or your plan, and everything plan.
The characteristics of your bond portfolio can be seen on page 18. The right-hand side weighted averages. The average current yield is about 3.5%. The average quality is a single A. And as Joan said, we're investment grade only. Average maturity, 4.5 years. And that duration of 4.01 indicates if rates did rise by 1 percentage point, the market value of your bond portfolio would drop by 4%. It's a relatively safe, low number. And it's managed to be that way.
How high can you go? The next page is 19. We're closed today, but I think if you think about the normal range for the S&P 500, price to earnings multiple is 15 to 19, right? So you're paying $15 for every $1 of earnings, or $19 for every $1 of earnings. I prefer the PEG ratio, price to earnings to growth ratio. I think the price to earnings multiple is an informative statistic, but I like the fact that if you think about companies that are actually growing their earnings. So that's the PEG ratio, which is, we have that here. Let's see. I'm going to jump to another page. If we go to page 21, So you see the peg ratio, so there's a lot of numbers on this page. So if you look at the, yeah, I know. So if you look at the third column from the right-hand side, that's the peg ratio. So that's the price to earnings to growth ratio. So really what is most important is how earnings are grown. It's not just price to earnings, it's the how fast are you growing as earnings. So if you jump down to the last couple of rows, you can see the price to earnings ratio, third column, is 2.2%. And then we have two different proprietary strategies, 2.3 and 2.1, growth, equity, income. You have a kind of combination of both. And then you see the S&P 500 is at 2.5. So that means it's more expensive. So the S&P 500 is more expensive than our strategy. So the lower number is the better number, because it means you're not paying as much for every $1 earnings. So I think that the fundamentals of our companies are much stronger than the S&P 500. So yeah, there are definitely companies that are ridiculously overpriced. There's no doubt about it. But our portfolio, our statistics are less expensive at the end of the day than the S&P 500 and the market in general. So that gives me comfort. And we actually own the same companies. Jim and I own the same stocks that you own personally. Not all of them, but we have a vested interest. And so we have a vested interest and we own the same companies that we do. So.
The part about taking, this is one point, the part about taking comfort in the lower valuation, it's great when it works. It started working after Brexit. You know, but we could have shown you this slide. We did show you this slide years before that. Had the same characteristics. You know, yeah, and it didn't work because the mentality wasn't for growth. The mentality was all about dividend yield. And these stocks don't have that. They're growing their earnings, they're using their profits to grow and expand, not to pay out dividends. So we saw that slide with the Lipper. The growth managers are winning this year, they lost last year. Right now, growth is winning. We'll see how long that continues. These things generally run in cycles. We're in a good cycle for growth at this point.
Please.
Sorry.
If I understand this right now, folks.
No, go ahead.
But your portfolio, our portfolio, still returns the yield of 2.0 through dividends. So that's nothing to, that's pretty good.
That's just the yield, that's not total return.
No, I'm saying, it's just from the yield viewpoint,
Right.
from the dividend viewpoint, it's still pretty good.
If you look on page 22, the current yield on your stock portfolio, you see the cost base is $1.1 million.
Right.
Market value, $1.5 million.
Right. If you look at it from a cost basis, it's much better.
Oh, yeah, but on a market value, the yield is about 1.5%.
Okay.
So it's really a growth-oriented portfolio.
Right.
Same thing about us talking about AT&T, which I'm getting beat up on, right? They brought
All the Verizon.
However, right, the telecom did wonderful last year, right? But I'm in the hole on it, but it also offers a 4.9% dividend yield, right? So that's not so bad. So it's a combination. The portfolio is built on a combination of the growth and dividend strategies. Yeah.
It's a lot more satisfying to hear these numbers this year than it was.
Yeah.
But my question is, if we did not have to keep as much in cash as we do to provide for lump sum payouts, if we got out from under that burden, can you speculate about what this performance might have looked like?
Honestly, I kept you as close to the 70% as we could. So you didn't miss much on the equities, and the bond numbers aren't that early. It's just that we didn't get anything from the cash. Right now, you can get about almost 1% yield on a money market fund. A year ago, you really couldn't. So sitting in cash now, at least you do get paid something. You might have missed 2% on 10% of the portfolio.
Now, when you say cash, you truly mean cash?
Yeah, I do. A money market fund, next day liquidity,
Right. Okay.
not at risk. 0.9% yield. Honestly, taking you through the presentation, beyond that is page 22, 23, you can see the actual portfolio as it stood at November 9. If you have further questions, we're happy to take them. I know you have a busy agenda.
And we probably should have had everything NOLA in Alabama.
Olin's awesome.
Alibaba was a difficult choice for us. We got a lot of concern buying that stock. It's worked out great.
Yeah, there's no real transparency there.
So,
It went up and down a lot. I'm a new board member, and I got this, and I enjoy numbers, I enjoy financial numbers, and I looked at this, and I thought it was a very clear, concise, easy to understand report, so I tip my hat off to you.
the camera, is the camera right?
I thought, I enjoyed looking at this, and I could understand it very easily, so.
Thank you.
And my question, Mr. Chairman, is this public report?
Oh, yes, everything we do here, everything we do is public.
No, I suspect that, I just want to make sure of that, because the other thing that I was, as you asked the question earlier, how come the state's lost so much money? And here we have a different example of financial management. And
Well, so did
here-
Yale, right?
Yeah.
Yale lost a lot of money too. There's a
Yeah.
lot of other, it's not
And so
just the
you-
state of Rhode Island. it's
So you
just-
have a good news
Yeah.
story here in
Yeah.
these crazy financial times, right here in little old Warren, Rhode Island.
Sure. Anybody have any other questions, comments?
I have some, an observation, it's just an observation, and I'm on page 6, and I didn't have the information from the handout, I have the information ending the first quarter of 2018, so I didn't have the most correct, but my points would hold to either handout. And what I did, I just looked at the return from the common stocks relative to the S&P 500. I know you just talked about the S&P 500. And one can quickly see that the return of the S&P 500 relative to common stocks over the last 1, 3, 5, and 10 years has been superior. It's been superior by what I would call a significant amount, and that could be calculated. It just seems that in looking at history, which I think is critical and very important, we do have a trend which has been better than your performance in common stocks. So I just wanted to make that observation. I think it's an extremely important trend based upon everything that I've been reading and everything I know about the markets. And it's not a trend with one company, it's just a trend in general. And I do have another thought too. When I looked at how the stocks are invested, I noticed that 48% of the stocks are invested in 4 mutual funds. So it would seem to me that if we're paying a fee based on total investment of the stock portfolio, maybe the fee should be somewhat less because so much of the money is in mutual funds. So those are 2 observations I have. I think they're important. I think the first one is critically important because the trend in the marketplace is to recognize how the S&P 500 has outperformed professional managers.
Should we be changing our market is growing and no signs of, should we be changing it to 75-25 rather than 70-30 to take more advantage of the equity?
Well, the problem we have is this necessity of keeping a chunk of money in cash. I mean, some would argue we're not being prudent enough by going to 70%. I agree with you, I'd be much more comfortable with 80%.
But I mean, you can sell a stock, even if it happens to be down that day slightly.
Well, imagine selling your stocks in 2009 and how painful that would have been.
That's a very good point.
My dependent of how much is invested. My point is that the S&P 500 has outperformed what we're looking at here.
Can I address that?
Yeah, we have a-
You've raised that point now twice. It has. You're absolutely right, mathematically you're right. But it helps to remember that your portfolio is not an S&P 500-based portfolio.
Right.
It's a diversified portfolio, which includes weightings in emerging markets and EFA, which are doing great this year. But if you look on the quilt on page 4, you can see they've had some awful years in the past 10 years. And have been a big drag on the portfolio. Doesn't mean diversification is wrong. It means when you diversify, not everything wins. You have winners and losers. Overall, you smooth the path. Overall, you have longer, better returns. But we didn't beat the S&P. You can see on the quilt, large cap stocks
What page are you on?
on page 4. Large cap stocks, that's the S&P 500. In 2014, right at the top. 2015, right at the top. 2016, close. And below that is international. we've had a drag within the portfolio that we advise clients to keep that because you get a payoff like you're getting this year. So we use a blended benchmark now, not an S&P 500 benchmark. I think the comparison with the blended benchmark is the appropriate one.
But my point would be this. We're seeing here that the blended benchmark has been outperformed by the S&P 500. I could make a very strong position that the S&P 500 has less risk than the Russell Mid Cap and the Russell Small Cap and also
I can make a counter position.
I'm talking risk. And that's sort of demonstrated here. That's my point. I'm not here to have a big discussion, and that's my point. I think and my point is substantiated by the numbers in your report.
So it's risk-adjusted return, really is what we're talking about, right? It's not just return, it's risk-adjusted return.
But my
And
point
so
is
did you want to
that
only,
the S&P 500 would have less risk, and not only does it show it's had less risk, but it's had a greater return.
did you want to own the S&P 500 in 2008?
You have to.
So
as-
indexing works very, very well if there's not, if there is no bubble. So what happened in 2008 and 2009, let's talk about that. So
Professional-
you had the financial bubble, right? Mortgage-backed securities, you had all sorts of other issues. So indexing works when you don't have this bubble effect.
But I'm saying you have to look at returns over periods of time, not the last month or 2 months, but over like 1, 3, 5, and 10 years period of time. And I've had conversations with Mark about that, and it's right here, and the returns have been better. That's what I'm saying.
I think we have a good point. I think one of the point then has to get translated into a policy. The decision was made at one point last year, whenever it was, to go to 70%. One of the things that could come out of what you're suggesting is that there'd be a certain amount of the money that's available invested in purely index funds, if that was the
Well, they have.
will of the board to parallel S&P 500 or any of the indexes.
I think some of this discussion is appropriate, but I don't think it's appropriate now. They're giving a report, okay? We comment on the report. It's up to us to determine if we want to change our strategy. We can ask them for input, and the last time they gave us input, and we changed it. But if you look on that report you get every month.
It was actually the
single
finance
page.
committee that pushed hard to move the
Yeah.
percentage of equity up.
Right, but it says it's not pure equity, it's not pure growth, it's a balanced report, and return is not the principal element there. It's having the cash and having the availability, the long term. You read that little section, it states right on the last one we got from you. I don't know where it is right now, but there's a statement there on the one page. Mark, you recall where that is. That little statement says this is what the mission is right now. I said that wrong. It's not the mission. The objective, investment objective, and it does not say it to maximize return. That's not what it says. So if we want to change that, I think we should have that discussion first in the Finance Committee, and then with the regular board, and we can decide what we want to do. But I don't think tonight is really the time to get into that.
And as I said, I just wanted, that was my observation.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not talking about change, and I think it's important. And let me just repeat one thing. I think the S&P 500 is given greater returns with less risk.
Oh, okay.
And you know, I'm a financial guy, and if one quantifies what the additional returns would have been over the 3, 5, and 10-year periods, we're not talking small amounts of money. We're not talking a couple thousand. We're talking a lot of money.
If we just take a look at that quote
Okay.
one last time, we can move on. Page 4, 10-year annualized return, the far right column,
Yeah.
does the math for all of us. And over the past 10 years, the leading categories, mid-cap stocks up 8.2%, small cap stocks are up 7.8%, and then the S&P is up 7.6%. So I failed to kind of follow your math.
And the S&P doesn't deal with cash flow volatility like we're dealing
In
with.
terms of our comparison with the S&P, you go down the column, you see non-US equities up just 1.7%, that's developed with deep index, and then emerging market equities up 1% per year for 10 years. they've been a big drag on our overall
I'm
portfolio.
just looking at the numbers on page 6. If the numbers on page 6 are inaccurate, let me know, but I'm a factual guy, I'm pretty smart quantitatively, and the
I
numbers
think
are
we'll be
like...
mindful of cash flows, because that's a big part of expense.
Well,
It's not
Let's
just.
move on, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we'll discuss that in the finance committee, any changes we want to make. Anyone have any other questions? Any other questions or comments? Thank you all for coming. I hope the traffic is easier
I
up
know.
going home.
Thank you. Thank you for
Appreciate
your
it.
time.
Perhaps this will reflect differently when we decide what to do about our participation, our contribution to the pension fund. Okay. Financial report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mark, you're up.
Thanks.
I just got your time off the top of my head. That's all we need. Due to the nature of the meeting this month is very early, I still
Didn't
have
get one.
a day or two to finish up on the
Okay.
meetings.
It's too early.
So with the holiday last week, and I just got
Stop
my...
there. That's fine.
Okay.
That's it.
But one point I wanted to bring up about the cash. I work with Gene whenever I have a liability coming up for a cash payout. I work with him to try to minimize the time that he has to convert to cash. So if I know a payout would be at the end of May, I might move that to after June, so he doesn't have to move it till June 1st. But we go back and forth. But a particular retiree has an option when they retire. Even though they say what they're gonna retire, they don't pick their option of either an annuity or a lump sum until after they retire and the actuary runs all the paperwork.
Oh, okay.
So I have to have, if it's a 300 grand lump sum, I have to have that 300 grand ready, even though they may choose the annuity, and I immediately call them to reinvest or whatever, so.
It really is a huge disadvantage to running money.
It is,
Yes.
it is, but it's not. If the intent is to close this out, paying out the lump sums reduces the liability.
Eliminates the liability.
And we're at 4.5 million now. We're going to, in the next, we only have what, 6,
Mark, I would
15?
be happy to pay it all out tomorrow.
Well,
I'm just saying that
No,
we're
no,
we're
but
like
I-
half pregnant, and that's
I'm
a
saying
considerable disadvantage.
if we go to close it out with 15 annuities, it's a little more difficult than if we only have 3 or 4 to deal with. And when we get down to, part of what we invest with them, it's going to be a declining balance. In the next, we're at 4.5 million now, we're going to probably be down to $2 million in that plan, I would say, in 4 years. So, and we're going to get to the point where we're at a minimal level of them administering the plan.
Right.
And so we have to have in the back of our minds options when the balances get down a little lower.
Bond.
And then there is a point, I think I had a thing to show, maybe about 7 years from now, we're gonna be down to 7 people. It might be a good time to end it at that point, what we can transfer.
But don't the fees go up also?
Yes.
The fees are gonna go
Well,
up.
Fees
it's
go up
low.
as the balance goes down,
Right.
the percentage, so the basis points,
If we need to take other
That's-
options, we will.
that's typical. The only other thing I've done in the past month is I converted all the fixed assets of the company to a computerized program that I now have set up. We were on a manual card system in Excel, and now we have a lot more fixed asset transfers with all the capital work we're doing. That I've automated that. I'm all converted, so at the end of the year, I won't have to do all these calculations manually. So,
Things are
I'm
moving
happy
on.
about that.
Good.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
I should have the reports out to you probably Friday, I'll email them to you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, the RFP, this is item number 7, RFP for engineering services for the Pawtucket pipeline. And we had 2 memos on this. One was dated the 9th and one dated the 14th. Pam, you want to?
And essentially, I gave you so much information, because I just wanted to show that we did a pretty thorough investigation for the proposals from the engineering firms that we did receive. We ran into a few problems with our little project in East Providence when we connected up to their 16-inch main, and it really emphasized to us how thorough the work has to be done in advance to investigate any of the issues that we might run into, such as numerous utilities in a very congested area. And the fact that we're working in another city, which isn't too happy to have us there. But, so based on all of our reviews, we actually did a thorough review on the proposals. We asked the 3 engineering firms to come in and gave us essentially a 2-hour presentation on what they were looking to do, and we were able to ask them a lot of questions, ask for some additional information. And we've come down to recommending Beta Group. Beta Group has a lot of experience in large pipe and congested areas. They gave us a very thorough proposal, really investigated different ways and means of being able to install the main, looking for the most economical methods. Going down Pawtucket Ave is going to be very expensive, so looking at some alternatives for different types of like directional drilling, sections of the water main that may be much less invasive in the major road areas and so on. So after all we went through, we feel confident that they'll be there to provide the best job for us.
What did the group that did the work on the Cross Bay Pipeline, the Beta Group? I thought I read something in that packet that Joe gave me. The Beta Group.
They did.
I think it was called Beta
Through
Engineering.
Providence to the, under the river.
So your recommendation is to award the $2 million contract to Beta Group?
Yes, and this includes design services for both Phase 1 and Phase 2, and construction services for Phase 1, or actually to build Phase 1. There are some other issues that were not included in the proposal, specifically some of the Department of Health requirements, because we don't know what those are going to be. There will be some requirements for testing for mixing of the 2 Pawtucket and Providence waters, and until we get a better handle on what those are for, we ask that they just put a holding spot there, and we'll negotiate something with them later.
So that'll be an addendum.
And that'll be at a later date.
So entertain a motion for that paragraph, the 3rd paragraph, essentially as a motion.
Move to approve hiring Beta Group for the engineering services proposal for a maximum amount of $2 million for design services for Phase 1 and Phase 2, and construction services for Phase 1 of the Pawtucket Pipeline project.
Second.
You added the word maximum, okay.
Can I ask?
Is there a second?
Can I ask?
Wait a second, is there a second? Okay, yes, you ask your question.
Maybe, on the, what we received, I guess it's the 3rd page, they have like a D&B report, and under financial stress class, they say fair. Does anybody know what that means? That to me, that to me raises certainly a red flag.
Offhand, no.
I think we should understand what that means.
I think that you're not going to get a whole lot of meaningful information from that. I think what you really want is a bank reference.
Well, I certainly dealt with Beta over the years and have hired them for a number of projects, and I think they're a great firm, but I had the same reaction when I put the page on the financial stress class. We're going to give them a $2 million contract and a substantive project here. And I had the same question my fellow board member had. What does that mean?
Somebody agrees with it.
Well, what does that mean? But the other question I have, and maybe it relates to a certain extent, is I'm not sure, I'm the new guy, so I can go and ask these questions, because I don't really know some of these things. How can you contract for construction services when you don't have the design done at this point? Wouldn't you, typically, I've seen contracts led up to construction services, but not including construction services. But it's understood that the company is probably going to do the construction services, but you negotiated at that time Because there are certainly in here a number of places where Beta says, and if the scope changed, so do our
That's right.
fees and everything. So we have to keep that in mind anyway, and fees are gonna change based on the complexity of the project. Well, why would you contract for that last phase?
Well, the construction for phase one it's a fairly known distance. You kind of,
Okay.
there's fairly well known how many days that's going to take, and it's based on the number of hours
Okay.
that you would oversee construction. So it's
All right.
based on the assumed number of days.
All right, so it's better known that.
That's even done with all of our contracts.
Okay.
And it's not, and if it's more days, we pay more. If it's less days, you pay less. It's based on the actual number of hours worked. And this general oversight with construction documents, that's fairly standard
Yeah.
to the amount of
Well,
hours that would
I
be
can agree
needed for
with
that.
I can agree with that, but since there are some unknowns here, I wasn't sure why that is done that way, so.
It's still
Nothing
based
wrong
on
with
the
it.
assumption of it'll take so many days
Right.
to install the phase one. That's why we did not do phase two, because we don't know yet what we're going to get into with phase two. Phase one, we do have some preliminary
So it
information.
doesn't include construction services for
Phase two,
Right.
no, which is the longer portion.
Yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
that's the biggie.
Yes.
Is there further questions? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that was it.
Further questions, comments? Okay, this is over 2 million, a hand vote, and we need,
Well, let me ask you this question,
Go ahead.
because we both had the same question about that fair, and I think what Gina responded with is what I would suspect would be the case in dealing with these rating companies, is that you probably won't get much more information than that's a classification, but how, is that something to be concerned about? Is the
What is your impression of the word fair? If someone asked you, oh, what do you, if you were Dun and Bradstreet, or you were rating someone,
If somebody said Juan Mariscal is a fair guy, I would say thank you. Well, if somebody says Juan Mariscal's financial condition,
It's an algorithm-driven
Wouldn't make a list.
result, and the more inquiries they have, the lower the rating. It's no different than your credit rating.
that's what I'm trying
Yeah,
to
so
figure
that
out.
if they've had, an influx of new business, it's gonna cause that
To go
to
down.
go down.
Okay.
Which is why I'm saying that if you really wanted understanding their financial situation, I would ask for a bank reference. And I would call the bank and ask what their high credit approval to Beta is, and how many times that's been drawn in the last 5 years, or some specific questions that will give you what you want to know.
You can ask satisfactory relationship as a vendor, because this is actually a definition online for DMV financial stress, and it's very generic. SCORE was designed to help you predict a business's potential for failure. It is designed to predict the likelihood that a company will obtain legal relief from its creditors or cease operations without paying all creditors in full over the next 12 months. So it is driven by inquiries. You're applying for a loan, looking at a bank, we're province DMVs, so bank reference is probably a good idea.
I mean, I was a lender for a number of years, and I would never have made a loan to a company based upon a DMV
No,
report,
no,
ever.
no.
so Mr. Chairman, would it be appropriate to add that to the recommendation that pending a satisfactory reference from their bank or something?
so you're making an amendment to the motion that it would, subject to a satisfactory bank reference report. Is that correct?
Is that the right
Who
terminology?
would make the decision as to whether or not that report is satisfactory?
Do we have to vote on this tonight? Pam?
Well, it would be helpful if we could get the project moving.
Anybody have any idea? how
I mean, let's look at something from an overall standpoint. We're not gonna spend $2 million tomorrow, okay? So it would seem to me that if we put that amendment subject to a satisfactory report, and that report can come back and let us know, the board can decide.
Generally, they won't give you a report. Generally, when people want bank references, they're calling us up and saying, we're looking at this client, the client's given us permission to talk to you, but the banks, they're not gonna obligate themselves with like they're a great company, because if they say they're wonderful and then something goes wrong, they're afraid you're gonna sue them.
They're gonna
So,
answer factual
right.
questions that
Handle
are
is
carefully
agreed,
constructed.
satisfactory, we've known them for a while. You know, if they give you those types of things, but it's gonna be more, you know what I mean?
Well, you
generic.
can get something that's not generic. You can, with Beta's approval, you can ask them the high level of credit to which they have extended Beta, and you know something more than you know today if it's $1 million, you know, high 6 figures, high 7 figures, high 8 figures, mid, low. You can get very specific information as long as Beta approves of you getting it.
Gina, would you be willing to,
No.
I mean, just put some questions together that they could ask?
I really don't want to do that.
Okay.
Well, we'd have to get Beta's, you'd have to go to Beta and ask them,
Right, you have to have their permission.
okay, and they would probably say, well, what are you looking for?
You can be honest, just say, I
Yeah,
got this
yeah,
deal,
no, it's
right, it says
fair.
fair, talk to the board, and we just want to get comfortable with the financial condition. We like a bank reference.
Mm-hmm.
See, they have according to something I read in here, they have over, all of their anniversary thing, they have over 500 employees total with the company. So they gotta be putting out a pretty hefty payroll on a monthly basis.
Yes.
And so they have to have pretty good relationship with the bank.
Sure.
I would think so.
And so I would think it would be a relatively simple thing, and a simple question that we've been discussing, that a bank could say yes or no to that.
This is not reinventing the wheel. My advice is that Pam and Mark put their heads together and get a list of 2 or 3 simple questions that others have asked. I don't mean others here, I mean others in other communities have asked to get comfortable with an engineering firm providing what for us is a significant size contract.
Is that something, Mark, that you can do, working with Pam?
Sure.
Okay. So, how do you want
It's
to,
a management function, it's not a board function, which is why I'm not willing to do it.
No, that's okay, I understand.
so do you want to have this as a
Amendment to the motion.
an amendment, or do you want to simply say that it's the sense of the board and Pam and Mark understand this? And they'll give us a response afterward.
I'll let them put it off till the next meeting, to be honest with you.
Pardon me?
I would like to put it off till the next meeting to get, if we have, get that finalized, you guys could feel for us.
I would agree with that.
When would, the next meeting wouldn't be until?
Next meeting will probably be December 13th or 20th.
Could we have, I don't know how, you know, could there be a quick phone meeting?
Oh, we can call a meeting, but we're spending $2 million. Joe, we have to have, what, 6 votes, and it has to be at least from all 3 towns. So you take that other risk, if we can call a meeting in 48 hours, then everybody's got
Let
to
me
show
ask
up.
this, could we approve this conditionally tonight, subject to a written report from Pam and Mark on what they find in terms of a bank reference?
Right.
And that the contract not be signed until you get that, and we approve of what you've given us? Is that legal?
That's the same thing, that's the same thing as waiting to December, because it has no effect, because what you're saying is, you want to see that report, approve the report, so you might as well just wait and vote on it in December.
Well, why can't we approve this subject to our receipt of the report, which could be done tomorrow?
Yeah, the other thing is that she can tell them that you've got the contract, and therefore but we have something because of that fair rating. This would be, to me, if they know they have the contract subject to that, they're more willing to, it's not just, we're just shopping around. They're gonna get the
My real
contract.
question is, can we approve this and vote to approve it tonight, subject to receipt of one additional piece of information? Do you have to
Because-
go back into a meeting to receive that information?
Well, you can receive the information, what if the information comes back and you're not satisfied? It's a contingent vote, I just wouldn't, if you said to me, it's contingent on Pam receiving a bond, a performance bond in the amount of X, that's easy, that's an objective. This is more of a subjective report that you're getting back.
Well,
So,
that raises an interesting question. Do we get performance bonds on the $2 million piece of construction that we do?
I don't know that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
But this
All
is a
contractors provide performance bonds.
that's why I'm not quite sure I'm a little unclear what you're looking for from this company, because,
I was not troubled by the Dun and Bradstreet rating because I find it to be typical, number one. But number two, I don't regard that as any kind of financial diligence. What I would regard as acceptable diligence on a $2 million project is calling it a. And
So I would
getting us a one paragraph, this is what he banks it.
To expedite this, could we,
So I'm comfortable voting for it as it says, unconditionally, but some of you are not.
Well, why don't we try that and see if we have 6 votes? Otherwise, we can sit around and talk about this for the next hour.
yeah, okay.
Right, so we have a motion on the floor, and it's been explained. There's the sense of the board that's been explained. All those in favor of awarding to Beta Group the engineering service proposal in the amount maximum $2 million for design services for Phase 1 and Phase 2, and for construction services for Phase 1, raise your hand. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the motion does not pass. Okay? Now, what are we going to do?
I
Another
don't know,
motion?
performance bond, I don't know what everybody's worried about.
Not for engineering firm.
I know, but it's still,
let me ask this the question yet. I think Pam and Mark know what we're looking for. We're looking for something from the bank that gives us a higher degree of comfort of the company's financial status. Can we construct the motion in such a way that we ask management to upon receipt of a report that they find to be satisfactory, and so they make a determination that is satisfactory and meets the intent or the concerns of the board, and it can go forward.
We call a special meeting, 48 hours.
So we could do that.
And we usually use Doodle, so we find out ahead of time who's going to be there. And if we don't even have 6 people, we know it's having the meeting.
Next week.
Well, what you're really saying, my reaction to what you're saying is that we think management is incompetent and only the board can make.
Oh, no,
this
I'm saying the
decision.
exact opposite. I'm saying that they're competent and they're capable of making this decision. We're just giving them a general guidance as to what we're looking for.
But if it still has to come back to the board.
No, the way I'm trying to construct it is it doesn't have to come back to the board. If they get a report in that they feel meets the board's intent, they would certify it as such.
It's too vague.
How are they gonna know if it's the board's
Yeah.
approval? I mean,
Yeah.
here we had something presented tonight that didn't meet the board's approval. So I think we should just get everything on the table first.
One thing I wouldn't do, I wouldn't go near or mention Dun and Bradstreet and this fair rating, because they're not, because this is not relevant. You were mentioning contacting Bader in regards to this fee. I keep Dun and Bradstreet out of it.
Mr. Chairman, all I know is we've been kicking this Pawtucket project,
Yes.
East Providence project around
Yes.
so long.
Yes.
We blamed the city of East Providence, we blamed the local town councils, we blamed the legislators, now we're holding it up.
Right.
Let's get on with the project and get it going.
Does anyone want to have a revote, or you're all satisfied that we're going to have to put this off?
I'd like to have a revote, Mr. Chairman.
Let's try it again. All those in favor of the motion, that's...
No, you didn't make the motion again.
I repeat my motion exactly as I said it the first one.
Right? Is there a second?
Maximum of $2 million?
Correct.
Maximum.
Is there a
The only
second?
change from what's written is I put the word maximum.
Maximum.
Okay,
Is there a second?
second.
It is seconded. Okay. No further discussion. All those in favor, raise your hand.
I'll change my vote.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we see 3 towns represented. So the motion is passed. Those opposed, excuse me, I'll ask for the position two
My
against.
strong advice is that Pam and Mark get a bank reference and report back to us at the next meeting.
I agree.
It's good discipline to do this.
It's best practice.
Okay, next item. Is the new boiler.
Move to approve as
Yes,
presented.
we discussed this last meeting.
Excuse me,
Do you have any other questions?
this is on,
Pardon me?
it's this, yeah.
It's in the package.
Okay, yeah, the boiler?
Move to
boiler.
approve as presented.
Second.
This is the $26,300, correct?
Motion made and seconded. Is there can I ask a couple of questions? Is it
Sure.
a gas boiler?
Pardon me?
Gas boiler?
Yes, it's gas.
Gas boiler. So you're getting a rebate of what, $2,000 on it? 4,000?
Is
And
the,
you have, is it the boiler currently a gas boiler?
Yes.
Pam, were you able
But
to
even
find
though
out?
it was such a higher energy savings on the new boiler, they still give us a $4,000 rebate.
is the 26.3, is that with the rebate or without the rebate?
And I believe that's without,
Okay,
because we have to pay for it first.
so it might come in, actual final cost might be less.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions? Ready to vote?
Were you able to determine if that was a used boiler? I think you had mentioned that it might have been.
No.
It was new, it's just kind of a model manufacturer
All right.
that the people that come and reach there.
It was an off-brand.
See them often.
Was it an off-brand?
Yeah.
All right, so ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The task orders. The first is Ferry Lane. I think these were,
These were
Last
in the packet for last month, so
Yeah.
we managed to skip them. But
let's see. I'm looking for the motion that we need to make on this, for the first one. Where is the money in that?
and that was,
So the task order will be available at the board meeting.
yep.
I guess we need the language.
$58,600.
Is this the handout tonight, $750,000?
From, that's the
That was
revised
separate.
one. That's, yep. That's the construction cost.
There was a math error that was just fixed.
You got a map of it?
Yeah.
What the total is on this?
Yeah, the first one is main replacement on Ferry Road, Fairview. You should get the motion.
Yeah, she didn't put the total on there.
Let's look at number 2 while we're waiting. This is the Upper Kickamuit Dam. The task order is in the amount of $11,000. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve that.
This is for the addendum to task order for Upper Kickamuit Dam.
Correct.
$11,000. It's moved and seconded.
Second.
Second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That's approved. Okay, so we got number 2 done. What's the language you want for number 1?
It's gonna take me a few minutes.
Okay,
Pick
let's
up my
go,
computer.
let's go to number
You want to do
3.
the Child Street, that's
Yeah.
56,000,
You want me to go
58,610.
get it, Pam? I have it in a folder upstairs.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's on my
On
computer.
right, on the memo of the 14th, that is the Pear Corporation, PAR, excuse me, engineering services for Child Street project in the amount of $58,610.
Move to approve this.
Second.
Question?
Yes.
Who ran off? Maybe you know.
Yes.
On page, it says attachment 3 budget. What the heck, task for bid phase services, $5,340.
It's,
Like next to the last page.
yes.
Is that the back of 14?
Yeah, it's the The November 14th memo, the Child Street
It's-
Bridge.
Right, that's
Next to the last
when
page.
we hold a pre-construction meeting. The engineer pretty much runs that. They go through all the engineering documents for any potential contractors. Then they respond, then we have a period where there's any questions that are asked by the contractors. They respond to those questions. They monitor the whole bidding process.
Okay, I understand now.
All right,
All right, thank you.
so we're ready to vote on that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. All right, that takes care of number 3, excuse me. Yeah, now we're back to 1. You have the
And I
motion.
apologize, yes, it's to, and that's to award Beta Engineering, the amount for design of $23,940 for the Ferry Road water main replacement.
Okay, do you have it on there, or we need to have the language precise.
I use the same language as used in the
All
last
right,
one, but
can you pattern that same language so that it's exact? So we're talking about,
but
instead of
awarding,
Power Corporation, it'll be Beta.
Yeah.
It'll be for the engineering service for water main replacement under Child Street Bridge,
this will be for
23,000,
Ferry Road
pardon me, yeah,
water main replacement.
for $23,940. Those in favor, oh wait, I
You
need
made the motion.
a motion? You're
No, I
making-
can't make, I live at the corner of Ferry and Fairview, so I'm gonna recuse myself from voting on this.
Okay, someone else make the motion? One's
So
done
moved,
there.
Mr. Chairman.
And moved and seconded. Ray, you did
I'll
the
second.
second, okay? Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
And I'm not
You're
voting.
abstaining. And it is passed. Very good. Okay. Quarterly charge-offs, people have seen that. That was just really for your information. And board correspondence number, we're going to go into executive session. We'll be doing 2 items. Let's talk about our next meeting before we go into executive session, because when we come out, will we take any action, Joe, after we come out of executive session, other than sealing the minutes?
No, just sealing the minutes.
Okay, so once we come out of executive session, we will just be sealing the minutes and ending our meeting. Right now, let's decide, do we want to meet on the 13th or the 20th? What's your
I think the 20th would be,
pleasure?
20th would be more appropriate, give us a little more time into the month,
I can't be here on the 20th.
okay? And do it
20th is closer than the holiday.
It's right there.
Good shopping to do.
too close. Gee, I'm trying to get out of here.
The 13th,
Whatever.
can, you put it down, so I guess
Yes.
you could be ready for that.
Yes.
All right, so we'll meet on the 13th. Anybody who definitely can't be there the 13th?
No, I can do the 13th. We seem to have moved from Thursday nights to Wednesday night. Is that deliberate?
Well,
Yes, just for this period of time, I'm taking a class on Thursday nights. It'll be done in December.
Okay.
Just, if you could, Mr. Chairman, when you put the agenda together on 13th, try not to have this extensive, I mean, if that's possible. Only because it's more convenient. People during the holidays can come here knowing they can get out and out.
understand. But we may have a little bit of repeat as we did from last year. A little holiday cheer. At any rate, our meeting will be on the 13th of December, so now we will go into executive session and entertain a motion. This is to discuss collective bargaining, Rhode Island General Law 42465A2 and North Farms pursuant to 42465-2. A2 as well. Okay? Motion is made by Bill.
Yep.
Seconded. Those in favor say, raise your hand. So it's clear, it was unanimous to go in, and we went into this at 7:29. Okay, it's 8:49, we've just returned from executive session, and entertain a motion to seal the minutes.
So moved.
Executive session is moved, seconded.
Second.
Those in favor, please raise your hand. And now a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Happy Thanksgiving.